Hello everyone! So I'm going to model for you primary source analysis, and how I'm going to do this is these are just 5 basic questions that I use over and over again when I analyze primary resources. It doesn't matter if it's written, it doesn't matter if it's a picture. If you stick to something similar to these 5 questions, you are going to model inquiry-based social studies every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a picture and I'm going to talk to you as if we were in a history class or a social studies class. Now I say history class, but please understand that you can use this model, this questioning model, with things that are not history related. So it could be about a community issue, a current event. It could be about a geographical problem. Think issues that if I have, that I can work out through problem solving, because that's basically what you're doing with primary source analysis. Is you are learning how to solve problems based on looking for information in whatever source that you are analyzing, as well as your own personal background experiences and the shared experiences that you're going to have with the other students in the classroom. So let's go ahead and look at our resource. Da-da-da-da-dum. Everybody ready? Drum roll. I don't know how that's going to sound on the video, but it sounded pretty terrible actually when I did it on my laptop. But imagine there was a cool drum roll there. All right, here we go. So I suspect that most of you all have seen this picture before. So what I'm going to ask you is we're going to use my favorite 5 questions just so you can see. The first question is, it's actually not a question, it's a statement. It is, examine the primary resource silently for 1 minute. So I'm going to be quiet. I want you to look at it. Take in everything. Examine it all. Okay, now I'm really being quiet. Okay, so I'm not going to actually wait a whole minute, because on a video that would be that much dead air would be like infuriating. But I will tell you, for your students, when you're asking a question, I always like to follow the 8-second rule, which is wait 8 seconds, and some student is going to respond happily because they don't like things being that quiet for that long. Students will find the answer if we stop answering our own questions. So we examine the picture for 1 minute, okay? And now our next step is going to be, I want you to describe all of the people, activities, environment, everything that you see in this picture. So students would take the time to do this, with a partner or on their own, or you could do it as a whole class. So things that we see. We see a boat on a river or the ocean, or some type of water. We see ice floating around. We see people, it looks like they're kind of struggling to make it through this river. See the guy in the green up here, looks like he's poking some ice to get it out of the way. I see men wearing heavy clothing. I see a person who I'm not actually sure if they are a man or a woman. I see lots of weaponry, like swords and guns, and I see what looks like uniforms being worn by several people. I don't think that this is a very recent photograph or painting, because I'm not really seeing any type of technological machinery when they're crossing. There's nothing that's indicating that everything that they're doing, that's not indicating that everything that they're doing is not being done by hand. I see what I think is an American flag. I also see a man standing upright, looking forward, like he's looking out at something. And there's a lot of light coming in, and it seems to be highlighting his face. So where this part looks like it's all lit up, and this part looks like it's dark and kind of scary a little bit. I see men on boats. I'm sorry, men on horses that are on boats. And nobody really seems to just kind of be chilling out. Everyone seems to be working, with the exception of this man here, who again seems to kind of sort of be looking out. Even this guy is kind of wrestling with the flag here. Now, the clothing I see people, again, dressed like soldiers. I see some guy kind of looks like a cowboy over here. Another person seems to have some sort of like animal skinned hat. These colors are making me think of the United States as well, and the flag as well. So these are all the things that I'm seeing in this picture. And we could keep going on with this because there's a lot going on. It's a beautiful picture. Okay, so next, what I'm going to ask my students to do is to start to make some inferences. Now, an inference is a very big word for an elementary school student, so I'm going to make sure that I use kid-friendly language and say an educated guess. I'm looking at something on this picture, and I am trying to guess about the meaning of it. And by the way, I apologize if you guys hear stuff in the background. I have some family members in the other room who are talking. So anyway, we are making an educated guess, and I'm going to guess that this person in the front of this boat that is standing up is important. Why? Because he seems to be the subject of the painting. He seems to be the person that everyone is looking at, and he's looking at something, and the sun is kind of glinting off of his face. I'm going to make an inference that the people who are in this picture are soldiers, because I see a lot of military equipment. I see a lot of, people looking like with the horses, something to do with the war. Because I see an American flag, I'm going to make the inference that these are American soldiers, or they would be American soldiers once the revolution is done. But do you hear how I use that phrase? Because I see an American flag, I think that these are Americans. So I'm creating those sentence starters for my students. They're having to make these guesses based upon the information that they're finding in the picture. All right, so moving on. I think that they are crossing some body of water, maybe to go to like a battle, and I wonder what battle they're going to, because I can't tell on the picture, but I am guessing, I'm making an educated guess that it's someplace cold because there's all this ice here, and it looks like they have to carry a lot of people over to get to the other side of whatever this body of water is. So again, I'm looking at evidence in the picture, and I am making an educated guess based upon the information that I see. Okay, I started to doing this a second ago, but I have questions that I'm going to start asking based upon these inferences. So I know it's someplace cold, and I know that they're soldiers, and I really think that they're American soldiers because of the flag, and I think that this guy is probably Washington because he sort of looks like George Washington, and I've heard of that guy before. I think he's pretty famous. So I wonder, I have a question if maybe this is from the Revolutionary War, because I've studied about the Revolutionary War, and I know that George Washington was the general, so maybe they are going to a Revolutionary War battle. So what battle are they going to? I want to know, why is it that they have to cross this frozen body of water? I wonder why Washington is looking over into the distance. What is he looking at? Why is he looking that way? I want to know why all the people are dressed differently. If they're soldiers, how come they're not all in uniform? How come they're not all wearing the same clothing? I want to know how that horse is sitting on that boat, because I didn't think a horse could get on a boat, and that seems kind of precarious. And I also am curious as to why George Washington is standing up and everybody else seems to be seated. So, like, what's going on there? And then the fifth part is going to be, I'm going to look for answers to my questions. So I have all these questions. Now I'm going to ask students, well, where do you think you could find the answers to these questions? Google is not an answer, nor is a book. What I want them to think about is, what subject area do I need to research to find out if my questions and my inferences are correct? So if I want to search through, primary resources, what area should I look for? The answer is going to be the Revolutionary War, because I know that George Washington was in the Revolutionary War. So where can I find the answers to my questions? It's going to be books about the Revolutionary War, biographies about George Washington, looking into digital resources online. That is where I'm going to find the answers to my questions. So it's not just saying, like, listing a search engine like or an encyclopedia like Wikipedia or something. You have to narrow down what the topic that they need to find, because that is one of the most challenging parts of research, is figuring out what exactly do I need to search for. Okay, so I'm going to show you the questions that I just did. So again, we examined the primary resource silently for 1 minute. Then we described all the objects, the people, the activities that you see. Then you make 2 inferences, 2 educated guesses about the primary resource. We made much more than 2, but I always ask my students to make 2. What questions might they have about the resource? So what are some possible questions based upon those inferences? And then 5, where might you find the answers to these questions? I'm going to show you a different set of 5 questions that you might want to use for a text resource. Now, I will say this, I could use these same 5 questions I'm just showing you for the text resource as well, but just in case, for a written primary source analysis, you could use these. Who wrote this? What was their background? What was the content of the source? Choose 2 key points. What was the author's intent or purpose? What information do you know that will help you understand the source? Any background information about the time period, the person writing it, anything about like other parts of the world at this time. So like, I know that there's a lot of revolutions going on now, so maybe this is another revolution. And what's one question that you have about the source? So those, again, are 5 questions you might use for a written source analysis. But again, you can use these as well. And for more younger children, this is the same thing as my 5 questions. I see, I wonder, I question. I see all of these objects, these people, these activities. I wonder what it is, what's going on here. I wonder if that they're crossing in the middle of the night because of this. And then I question is, why are they crossing in the middle of the night? So distinguishing between I wonder and I question. Okay, so I just wanted to give you, for your information, after you question through your students, and hopefully you're going to be able to get information from them, because if you keep asking them and you keep scaffolding the questions, they will get to the correct answer. But the fun thing about this painting is what you're looking at, like the problems that exist in primary resources, because it is a painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware, but is highly inaccurate. This painting has a specific purpose. It was painted by a German man in 1851. Now, I know that you all may not be super big American historians, but you know that the American Revolution occurred in 1776, right? So this crossing of the Delaware occurred 1776, so this is way long time later, and it's done by a German man who grew up in America but wanted to inspire his fellow Germans to join in the revolutions of 1848 that were going on in his country. He modeled it on the Rhine. You couldn't fit horses on boats like this. You had to use ferries. that Washington would have toppled the boat, it's entirely historically inaccurate.